one of the stories last year that Joe Montana was commenting on was this notion of Tom Brady leaving New England. Joe Montana said he shouldn't. Tom Brady did, and it's worked out pretty well so far for Tom Brady. So this year, the quarterback carousel is going to be a lot more robust. It's not just Brady. There's a bunch of guys. And as we bring in Myles Simmons, we say good afternoon to him. And Myles, I want to start with you. You haven't chimed in yet on Deshaun Watson. Charean and I spent a lot of time talking about it. What's your gut reaction when you hear Watson wants out? And, of course, the Texans are initially going to say, we want to keep him. How do you think this is going to play out?
I think, first of all, it's fascinating because it sort of speaks to the level of player empowerment that we're seeing in the NBA that we just haven't really seen so far in the NFL. And I kind of love it just from a chaos standpoint because it's just not really something we've seen before. And I don't know, I kind of love the chaos a little bit, especially when nobody gets hurt. So this is something where I kind of think it makes a lot of sense for Deshaun Watson to want to go to Miami because, A, that team won 10 games last year. It's clearly on the rise. And they've got, if you're Miami, you've got some questions surrounding Tua Tagovailoa and how he can actually do better. Because, look, you used Ryan Fitzpatrick as a relief pitcher. So that makes sense to me. And from the standpoint that Florida doesn't have any state income tax. So he's already used to that with Texas, and if he wants to go to New Jersey, say, and play for the Jets, then that's an entirely different tax situation too. So, I mean, if I'm a player, I want to maximize the chance for me to win, and I want to maximize the chance for me to make as much money as possible, and I think Miami would kind of make sense for him in that way.
Myles, I hope he goes to Miami just simply because I think they're ready to win now and lacking the quarterback. If I had to bet on a team, I'm going to bet on the Jets for two reasons. We know that he wanted the Texans to interview Robert Saleh. So we think that Deshaun Watson wants to go play for Robert Saleh. And I think he wants to go play in the New York market because, speaking of that money, there is a state income tax, but he thinks he can make more money in the New York market. Now, I would argue that Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers have done fantastic things marketing-wise outside of football, and they play in small market cities. So, and it's not like Houston is a small market city, frankly. So he could do all those things elsewhere. I don't think it necessarily has to be in that big market. But if I'm going to bet on a team, Mike, I'm going to bet on the Jets for Deshaun Watson because of all the picks they have and what they can give up to get him.
And if you're the Jets, it's so easy to justify giving up whatever it takes to get the thing you haven't had since Joe Namath, a true franchise quarterback, and to sell all the tickets and the PSLs and everything that they have struggled to maximize since they opened MetLife Stadium a decade ago. That's what the Jets need. And they have 2 first-round picks that they got for a guy who didn't want to be there, and they had gotten to the point where they didn't want him there anymore in Jamal Adams. Throw those 2 picks onto the pile, and if you have to throw in the 2nd overall pick this year to get it done, do it, and you get Deshaun Watson. To me, it's a no-brainer. All right, Charean, we talked earlier about the possibility of Matthew Stafford going to Houston. I want, and I'm going to, sorry, control room in advance, I'm going to combine the next 2 into one. What if the Cowboys decide, instead of continuing to be in this franchise tag dance with Dak Prescott, $37.4 million this year, $53 million next year if they tag him again, and I'd be stunned if they devote that much because it's a 44% raise by rule for the 3rd franchise tag. What if the Cowboys say, and look, Mike McCarthy competed against Matthew Stafford. He may secretly think he's awesome. What if they just say we can spend a hell of a lot less money on a guy who's only 32, who can come in here and run this offense and throw the ball all over the place, and that's what we're going to do? Do you think there's any way that the Cowboys entertain that possibility?
And oh, by the way, he's from Dallas and played here for forever, so everybody knows him here. I don't see any possible way that happens, Mike. If I'm going to bet on it, I'm going to bet on Matthew Stafford to go to the Colts. I think he fits their offense and what they're going to do, what they want to do. If they can't get Carson Wentz, who we know Frank Reich's history with Carson Wentz, then I think Matthew Stafford is a really good alternative. Now, I would make a phone call if I'm the Colts to, I started to say Oliver Luck, but Andrew Luck, who retired obviously and would cost them nothing to get. But the Colts have shown they're willing to trade draft picks for good players. They did it last year with DeForest Buckner, and that worked out great for them. I think the Cowboys are going to get Dak Prescott signed to a long-term deal. I don't think they have a choice. Jerry wants to keep Dak Prescott, and he's never lost a player who he's really wanted to keep, ever. And so I think he gets he's going to pay more than he wants to pay, but I think they get Dak Prescott signed to a long-term deal.
I think they have to get him signed to a long-term deal, right? It's just the only thing that seems to make logical sense for me, because if you look at it and, you have to hope that Dak Prescott can be the kind of quarterback that he was before he suffered that injury last year. But I think Dak Prescott has always been a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford. So if you're talking about Dak Prescott and maybe going away from him, then it's got to be because he's really not healthy, and you know that he's not healthy. And I think that would be the only way that Matthew Stafford could be an upgrade, despite, the cost and money and all those different types of things. But I also think that if you're talking about Matthew Stafford, he's somebody that probably will land with the Colts. The Colts seem to make the most sense because they are out of the conference. They do have a reputation for spending the draft capital that they need to. But if you're Washington, I think you got to make that call as well, because you've got a team that has a darn good defense. You've got some pieces on offense too. And so if you have that quarterback that's not just Tyler Heineke, maybe that thing tips a little bit, and you can really do some good things and make it to the playoffs and be a real contender in the NFC East. But one team that I think maybe should make that call to the Lions too is the Rams, because now you've got all these connections between these front offices. And I know that the Jared Goff contract is hard to get out from under, and Les Snead talked about how there are ways that they can do that yesterday. But if you're the Rams and you get a quarterback like that, if you pair him with that defense that's good, and if you somehow can make that work with the picks and the money and all that, I think that would be a really interesting and a really good move.
And I agree that the Cowboys very much want to keep Dak Prescott and get him signed to a long-term contract. The dynamic here that we can't overlook, Dak has never wavered on the leverage that he has accumulated. And this year, he's got a lot more than last year, because he can look at it and he can say, I get 37-4 for one more year, and next year, unless you want to pay me 53-4, and chances are maybe they would instead use a transition tag at a 20% bump, but that's still $45 million. I think he'll still be inclined, even coming off of that broken ankle, to go year to year, to keep betting on himself until the Cowboys give him something that he thinks properly reflects his long-term value to the team, and that only is a 4-year commitment instead of the 5-year commitment on which the Cowboys have been insisting. All right. In the NFC North, the Packers, the champions of that division, again, 13-3 again. They clearly want Aaron Rodgers back. I believe Aaron Rodgers wants clarity about his future. Is it a 1-year thing? Is it a 2-year thing? Is it a 3-year thing? How does Jordan Love figure into this? Myles, we haven't had a chance to talk to you about this on the show this week. Obviously, it's been a big point of conversation. What are your thoughts about where Aaron Rodgers will be, and will he get the kind of commitment that lets him know in Green Bay it's not just a year-to-year arrangement?
If the Packers are smart, that's what they should do. I mean, because as you pointed out, Mike, plenty of times, look, Aaron Rodgers is getting paid the same amount of money that Jared Goff is, and that is just not right. I mean, I think that we can say that just based on the performance of both of those guys. If that's what the case is, something's a little bit wrong there. So when the Packers decided to draft Jordan Love, I mean, we all know that they may or may not have, put a little extra motivation in the cup of Aaron Rodgers. But if Rodgers goes out there and he does what he's done this year, and now he's the likely MVP, yeah, he deserves to have that kind of commitment from the Packers to say, look, we're not going to get rid of you anytime soon. And I think that's something that Tom Brady wanted when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, and things worked out well enough for the Patriots that they went on to win another Super Bowl. So look, I think that if you are the Packers right now, and did Mark Murphy say this, it would be stupid to not necessarily give Aaron Rodgers the type of commitment that he wants, so that you can not only just reach the NFC Championship game next year, but maybe you're playing in the Super Bowl and you're finally getting, I guess, maximizing what Aaron Rodgers' potential is, because he's only played in one Super Bowl, which is just kind of weird to me. But, I mean, just it's the way his career's worked out.
Myles, if he wasn't coming off an MVP season, I think we'd be having a
And we'll get Charean back. Look, let me pick up where Charean was going. If he isn't coming off of an MVP season, then the Packers may be thinking, do we go to Jordan Love? Not necessarily 2021, but how much do we accelerate his progress so we could go to him in 2022? And, I resolved this whole thing in my mind very simply. Aaron Rodgers wants to know, is Jordan Love Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to get traded in a few years and I'm still the guy? Or is Jordan Love me, the guy who was behind Brett Favre, who eventually got installed as the starting quarterback, Myles? And I think that's the core of this. He wants to know where he stands. And then once he knows where he stands, he can make his decisions accordingly.
Yeah, and I think, like you've said, Mike, he deserves that. And if it was a season where he didn't play as well as he played, then I think all of us would probably be questioning whether or not the Packers need to turn to Jordan Love. Because you don't pick that guy in that round, trading up to get him, without the intention of actually playing him at some point over the course of his career, right? I just don't think that that's what you do. If they really were doing that, then maybe they would have selected a quarterback later on, and then they would have given Aaron Rodgers another weapon for the offense, or maybe pick somebody for the defense that could have been a contributor right away. They didn't really get any of that done with last year's draft class for the Packers. So now I think that Aaron Rodgers is in a place where if he really wants to get out of Green Bay, we know that he can. He could be another one of these guys that starts the whole player empowerment thing, right? Where he says, you know what, I don't really think I want to play here anymore. If this is the way you guys are going to treat me, I'm not happy with this. You need to send me somewhere else. And if that would to be the case, then that would be massive, because even though Deshaun Watson is younger and probably would command more in a trade and will command more in a trade, Aaron Rodgers is still proven that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Again, we're talking about him being the MVP this year. So that would be very fascinating. I just feel like at this point, you're right, Mike. He wants that commitment from the Packers, I should say. And if they're smart, they're going to give it to him.
Yeah, I agree completely. And we'll find out sooner rather than later, I think, what they're thinking and whether or not there's going to be a new contract for Aaron Rodgers that would give him that clarity and, in turn, the commitment that he is looking for. And also, he wants some of these other guys to be kept around. It's going to be tough this year with the salary cap shrinking, but also there may be opportunities to go out and buy some free agents who get cut by other teams and are saying, hey, we'll sign on for the Green Bay Packers. We want to try to win a Super Bowl during this year where the salary cap is going to constrict. All right, Ben Roethlisberger news today. And he was a guy that I put in the uncertain category because we needed to hear more about his contract. Art Rooney II, the owner of the team, said today, we'd like to see Ben back for another year if that can work, but there's a lot of work to do to see if that can happen. We've been upfront with Ben and letting him know we couldn't have him back under the current contract. He understands we have to do some work there. Now, first of all, we'd like to have him back for another year. That implies one more year. And secondly, and this is a point that we've addressed at PFT, Roethlisberger's cap number this year is over $41 million. It's $41.25 million. They need to extend the contract, take the money he's due to make this year, turn as much of it as they can into a guarantee, and push that cap number into future years. And you can shrink it into the range of, it's going to at least be 22,250. You can get it to 26, 27, 25 if you're really aggressive. All those dollars are going to hit the cap at some point in the future, Myles, but that's the way to do it. He still gets every penny he's due to make this year, but you do it in a way that you defer that cap charge to next year and possibly the year after that. And Roethlisberger today said, I want to do everything I can, and made that clear to them from the very beginning. I don't care about my pay at all this year. I don't think that means he's going to take less, but I think he's willing to do whatever he needs to do contractually to help them reduce the cap number so they can have other players around him.
Yeah, especially in a year where the cap is going down like this. I mean, he's got to be realistic in saying, okay, I need to do something so that the team can be good and can compete and get past the first round of the playoffs, even though they started 11-0 this year. This is something that's interesting, though, because, Mike, I don't know how you felt about it, but when I saw Ben Roethlisberger in tears on the sideline at the end of that game in the divisional round against the Browns, I kind of thought that he was a guy that looked like this was the end for him. And so I didn't necessarily know exactly what that would look like, where Ben Roethlisberger might retire, but He's a guy who's been beat up, who's been battered. He's had elbow issues. He's come back and he played, at a pretty high level this year. But I just wasn't sure that he was somebody that really wanted to come back for another year of this. And so it was a little bit surprising to me to see his quotes today and see that, yeah, he was willing to do whatever it takes to come back. And the notion that he probably doesn't care about his salary. I mean, everybody cares about how much money they're going to make. I know that that's a nice thing to say, but I don't believe that it's true. But I am sort of surprised that he does want to come back instead of retiring.
We welcome Charean back. Charean, we missed you.
Thank you. Thank you. I could hear you guys. I just couldn't. Apparently, you couldn't hear me. But I'm with you, Myles. I think when I saw Ben Roethlisberger sitting on the bench, I thought that's it for him. But I do think he's back in Pittsburgh, Mike, for one more year at least, and kind of see how that plays out. But if I'm the Steelers, I'm certainly thinking about finding a franchise quarterback I can groom to come in behind him, whether that's a draft or some young guy somewhere else, because they need to start thinking about the future.
The other side of this, though, how much cap room are they going to have to put a team around Ben that's going to help Ben get to where he wants to be? And does he really want to come back if it's going to be another year where it all kind of fizzles apart down the end of the stretch? Is that really worth it to him? If they don't think, and if he doesn't think, they're going to have a team that's going to compete with the likes of the Ravens and the Chiefs and the Bills and these other great teams in the AFC, you get to a certain point where you're like, I don't know that I want to do this. And, it may be, and this may be a topic to really delve into more on a later date, but I can't help but wonder whether or not there's a certain amount of no one wants to be the bad guy here. The Steelers don't want to say we don't want him. Ben doesn't want to say I want to retire, because the Steelers could say you owe us $12.5 million in unearned signing bonus money if they really wanted to do that. I'm not sold that they're going to work this out, because I don't know how much cap space they're really going to save. And if it does drop to 180, I don't know how you put a team around him. And if Marquise Pouncey retires, what do you do there? And it was always this sense those two were joined at the hip. So I don't think it's over yet. I'm still going to keep an eye on it, and I still think there's a chance he retires. And I think if he knew he didn't know that money, that $12.5 million, maybe he would say, I think it's just time at this point to move on.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.